Ecological Project Office, Shehu Ibrahim MNI, to give us an insight into Ecological Fund and its disbursement.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Kiran. Good morning, Pere. I think your background gave a very good, outlay of what the fund is all about. And to start with, I would want to say that I will commiserate with Nigerians, first of all, over the recent devastating flooding, the loss of lives and livelihood, and, the impact it had on all of us as a people. Then secondly, I would want to also inform Nigerians that ecological fund, just as was given at, in the background, is creation of a law. The FAC Act of 1981 created that fund. And the fund is supposed to be shared between the federal government, the states, and the local governments, including the FCT area councils. But the FCT as a territory is not part of the sharing. So it's 2.32% of accruals into federation account monthly. So whatever accrued into federation account monthly, 2.32% is set aside, to manage particularly for this fund. Out of this 3.2%, 0.72% is given to the states, all the 36 states of the federation. 0.72 is given to them, while 0.60 is given to all the local governments, and the federal government retains 1%. Out of the 1% of the federal government, there are also some agencies of federal government that, by virtue of the Establishment Acts, also get some allocation from that 1%. So out of the 1%, the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, gets 20% out of the 1% of the federal government. And the NALDA, National Agric Land Development Agency, also takes 10% from that 1% of federal government. The Northeast Development Commission also takes another 10% from that federal government allocation. And also the National Agency for the Great Green Wall takes 5%. So 45% out of that 1% is given to all these agencies by virtue of the Establishment Act. So what remains to the federal government as ecological project office is 55%, and that's what we manage. As an office, we have a structure, and the structure is that there is a ecological project management committee, which is chaired by the Secretary to the Government of Federation. The permanent secretary is the secretary member, and then the other management staff of ecological project office are the members. This is the body that advises the president on the utilization of the remaining 55% of the federal government share of that particular fund.
All right, many thanks, Shehu Ibrahim, for that explanation of how the money trickles down. But I would like to quickly bring in Professor Babajide Alo. This is your area of expertise. You have followed developments in the country for a long time. Would you say that the ecological fund is being effectively used in this country?
Thank you very much. It's quite difficult to say that ecological funds, which have been rightly assigned, rightly allocated by law, are being effectively utilized. In the sense that the ecological fund allocated to states sometimes are misapplied, sometimes are not being correctly applied for solving environmental and ecological problems. And this is where we need more monitoring and more supervision, because it's an intervention fund. An intervention fund means that it's supposed to solve basic environmental problems, basic ecological problems for the teeming millions of Nigerians. The last flooding, bad flooding that we had, which obviously came from excessive rainfall that happened in the country. The rainfall that came in this year was beyond what even NIMET, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, expected. And therefore, the fund is now to come in and intervene and assist the teeming millions of Nigerians who lost property, who lost farmlands, who lost lives, with some mitigation effect on them. But of course, the Ecological Project Office has projects all over, and they're doing well with those projects. But is it reaching the teeming populations? That's where the question is, and that's where we say we're suggesting as environmentalists to say we need more monitoring, we need more effective implementation of the funds at the local level, at the state level. We do not want a situation where we find that the money is misapplied. It's sent to solve other problems in the states or other problems at the local government instead of being applied directly to ecological and environmental problems. These problems can never abate. These problems will keep coming. Environmental issues are issues which you have no control about. They are inevitable. And therefore, that's why the fund has been set up as a standby fund, so that as soon as these things happen, then NEMA, our Environmental Management Agency, and other bodies in charge can have funds to immediately intervene with the people. So overall, I would say we need more monitoring. We need more, particularly at the state and local government levels, how the funds are applied.
All right. Thank you indeed. And we go to Lagos studio where we have Dr. Ido Salau. Of course, he's a management expert, environmental management expert. Dr. Salau, well, you've listened to our first speakers who actually dwelt on the establishment of ecological fund and its utilization. But I want you to go beyond that, or perhaps give us another perspective to your understanding of how ecological fund is utilized in Nigeria. And going beyond that, I mean, is for you to look beyond just an ecological fund establishment, but look at the intricacies of its deployment for the services it was provided for in the states and council areas. You are an environmental expert, and I want to believe that you may have data of what has gone down in terms of the application of ecological funds by the agencies concerned and the state authorities in terms of the implementation.
Thank you for this question. I will want to look at it for this question in another perspective. The problem we are having about disbursement of ecological fund is that Professor Alo have just dwelled with on one of it, is that the monitoring and who is supervising the disbursement of this money and the application of this money to project that is being targeted for. And that is where I am concerned, because I have participated in some ecological projects in Nigeria, and I can give data. And from the data I will give you the one that that participated in Ilorin Kwara State. It was a purely ecological project. And that is where the issue of funding, because there is no way you want to talk about ameliorating ecological project without adequate funding being put in place. The little we are having from Ecological Fund Office, I'm not sure is enough. And I'll give you an example. The dredging of Asa River in Ilorin was executed by Ecological Fund in 2013. The entire Asa River, it covers about 10-point-something kilometer. The phase 1 of that project was just about 2.3 kilometer dredging and construction of concrete embankment. It cost 1.23 billion naira to do that. The second phase is ongoing, and that's in a particular state. And if you look at the data, the permanent secretary, in terms of fund release, And we have 36 states and FCT. And we have agency of government that have access to this ecological fund. If one particular state is being given phase 1, phase 2, the second phase is about 1.6 billion of the dredging of Asa River. So we are talking about 2.7 for one state. And in a particular year, maybe 160 something billion naira. So how will that be able to tackle ecological problem in terms of maybe ameliorating most of these major challenges that we are having? And we have all these major challenges in all the 6 geopolitical zones. The Niger Delta, they have serious oil pollution. In the northeast, we have the shrinking of Lake Chad. If you want to recharge Lake Chad, which has shrunk up to about 10% now from its original 100%, that means 90% of Lake Chad has dried up. And there, the amount of money you will use to do a kind of moving water from where you have excess water to the lake of the ecological fund is that it is not enough. We should look for more in terms of increasing, but before we do that, we need to rejig that office called Ecological Fund Office. In the first instance, they changed the name from Ecological Fund Office, which is an intervention office, to Ecological Project Office. Now they are awarding contract. Before, they used to disburse that money out, even the little one that, the 1% that is accrued to federal government. Let's assume the states have gotten their own share. And it's because lack of monitoring and supervision. That's why a governor will go and use a ecological fund to do a political campaign. I think one governor was guilty of that of recent in the past. And my own point of view is that if we reject the ecological fund office, let's look at the way forward in other climes. How do they utilize this money? There is a need to bring in the private sector to support the public sector in the management of it. And I'll give you an example, because if you see, the climate change is now in the Bunsen burner of the world discourse now, the climate change issue. And money is now being appropriated, is now being a mark to tackle climate change worldwide. And we have African Development Bank even to coming into it. So if we want to really do and want to maybe have easy access, and that people will know that, yeah, justice is being done in terms of release of this fund to ameliorate ecological problem, I will suggest that we should have a special bank, like what we have, like mortgage bank, agricultural bank. Maybe a bank should come out from ecological fund through the ecological fund office that will be managed by both public sector and private sector to target ecological problem nationwide. Now we are having green economy and blue economy. That is what is trending now in the environmental business. Housing scheme is going on. We're having energy problem. We can ask those who are constructing housing estates to remove the housing asset from the national grid, and we can use renewable energy source to generate electricity for housing scheme from the ecological bank, and they can have access to the green bank, and that is sustainable, because those that will manage the bank will be able to lend the private sector the money to tackle that. Again, waste management problem in cities, major city in Nigeria. We have an example of Lagos, more than 1,000 PSP, private sector. They need money. They have to go to private bank to source for the money. But if there is a special bank that is coming out from ecological fund office, from the ecological fund, that will be used to target ecological problem, and private sector will be able to access it. Whatever gain, whatever profit the bank is generating can be used as grant to assist or to do other ecological problem. And that is different from what the government is doing. So that is my own view of point in terms of, because I'm a field man. As a consultant, I've accessed this ecological fund office before for projects through some states, and I know how it's being disbursed. And let me give you an example again. The Bar Beach, not far from where I am. In those days, Lagos State had benefited from ecological fund at least Beach restoration of the coastline of Beach in 2003, 2004, close to about 6 billion naira sunk into it. But the visionary government in Lagos then look at it that we cannot be burying money in the ocean. And they took the advantage by bringing in private sector to develop the Eco Atlantic. Now, fund is being through the private sector, fund is coming in. Problem of ocean surge in Atlantic in Bar Beach has solved. The place is now becoming a prime area where embassies everywhere, everybody is now buying land. These are the kind of things we should be looking into, not to be giving arms to state and they will mismanage it. That is my own opinion. That's my own suggestion for now.
Thank you so much. You have actually mentioned so many issues, just like Professor Babajide also talked about. So I would like the Permanent Secretary to quickly respond to, some of the issues. It is clear that there are issues. What really, from your own point, you're the Permanent Secretary of the Ecological Project Office. You know what the challenges are. Yes. Could you please, respond to some of these issues and tell us what the challenge is from your own point?
Yes. Thank you very much once more. I think it's also important to say that Nigerians seems to have more confidence, at management of the fund at the federal level, because there's a structure that you can see, there's a structure that you can approach, there's a structure that you can make requests to. In our office daily, we receive several requests from Nigerians, individuals, communities, traditional rulers, institutions, with regarding different aspects of erosion issue, flood control, pollution, issue of, even coastal management and things like that. Presently at our data bank, we have more than 3,000, so requests that we receive, and daily we receive such requests. We have a structure in place that we, always attend to people. We also have a standard operating procedure at the office. As a community, you can always write to tell us what your problems are. And when you write to us, there are certain expectations also from you. For example, you have to tell us the nature of the problem, give us some pictorials. You have to give us like some drawings to show the real technical nature of what of the problems, and then we'll try to guide you further. There are certain requests we receive where they don't know about these particular requirements. So in such requests, we usually give them like a guide on what are the expectations. As I've said, after receiving the request, we look at the request. And then we now employ you to, first of all, now bring the engineering designs of that particular area, that you want us to intervene. You give us the pictorials so that we can really see it, on the ground. And then I also give us like the BEME, that is the Bill of Engineering, Measurement and Evaluations. And then when we look at it in the office, we now capture it in our data bank. From what we have seen, now we also send our own engineers to go to such places and also do some verification. And then by the time we have it, now we come and keep it in our data bank. When we come, to in our project, intervention circle, we bring out such information, we process it, and then as a committee, we sit down and we advise, Mr. President on what needs to be done. As an office, presently, we have intervened more than 333 projects. We have already done even a compendium, to show to show people that it is visible, it is verifiable, it is there for everybody to see. And what we have done from that compendium is to first of all have a pictures of the that's before our intervention, how the place looks like. And then while ongoing intervention is going, we also have some records of that thing. And then by the time we're through with the project, we also have such pictorials. Another thing is that we always carry the community along whatever we do. If any project is going on, the benefiting committee is also part and parcel of all decisions concerning that particular project. The contractor, the consultant, the projects are all, coming together with other stakeholders, always agree, engage, and try to manage so that the expectations of the community will be met.
Look, Permanent Secretary, yes. There are things I want to clear, really, Okay. There are issues Dr. Salau raised with respect to the nomenclature of your establishment. So it used to be Ecological Fund Office, and now it has become Ecological Project Office. So we need to know the distinction between the two, because it may reflect in your operations, in your functionalities.
Definitely.
Right. So that's why he mentioned that you people are now engaged in awarding contracts, or doing projects, directly applying instead of just distributing the money. And if what you explained after an read question is what we can go by, which means that you also partake in direct, use of the fund in terms of coming to rescue communities and what have you. But I had thought that you distribute the money to states. You have explained to us the percentage, in terms of distribution to state, to agencies, and what have you. So is your office now directly involved in spending this fund?
Okay, prior to 2021, there has been this misconception about what that particular office is, because the nomenclature used to be Ecological Fund Office. So the public, were thinking that there is a particular fund, pool of fund that the office is keeping or managing. But it became necessary by 2021, through a circular that was issued by the SGF, to change, after presidential approval, that name of that particular office from Ecological Fund to Ecological Project Office. It's very important to tell Nigerians that the accruals, that monthly accruals I've explained earlier, that 2.32%, that fund is in the Federal Ministry of Finance, not with our office. And monthly, when Federal Ministry of Finance is doing the Federation allocation meeting, all these things are shared. So the federal government shared is kept in the Federal Ministry of Finance. The Federal Ministry of Finance also disbursed to the states directly. They also disburse to the local governments directly. In fact, even all these agencies that I mentioned that are also taking a part, from the federal government's 1% share, also get their disbursement directly from the Federal Ministry of Finance. So as an office, we only manage the 55% that is remaining with us. And we only deal with a request of the public and then execute projects. But we don't have any fund that we manage as a fund.
Okay. Yes, I'll stay with you. You don't have any funds that you manage. Yes. You get 55%, and you said you get requests from communities and all of that. Yes. Now the question is, what fund do you use in executing such projects? Because you're also disbursing money to those communities, or rather to those local governments where those communities are, or states and all of that. So if you are, part of project in certain communities, what funds are you using? Is it what is given to those states or local government, or your own share of the fund?
That is irony. The problem is, it is just that 55% out of the 1% of federal government that is used for all these projects I've talked about. What we do is that we cover the whole 6 geopolitical zones. Anytime we do an intervention, we go to all the 6 geopolitical zones. And at a time, we go to states, 2 states per zones. So it is that same 55% that is left for the office to manage that is being utilized for all these projects.
So who checks what the states receive and how it is used?
That's a constitutional issue. It's a subnational. We cannot be able to go in and start asking about how they, disburse or utilize their own fund.
Okay, and that's exactly why we are going to Professor Babajide Alo, who earlier, reminded us that the utilization of ecological funds by the subnationals is not something to write home about. Answer, I would like you to speak your mind based on the explanation of the permanent secretary here, with respect to the nomenclature of the establishment and all the projects that he said that the office is also assisting communities to carry out as against the disbursement, which originally, people believed, the office was created.
Yes, I listened carefully to the permanent secretary. The permanent secretary seems to have his hands tied by the law establishing the office, in the sense that I heard carefully now that the EPO, the Ecological Project Office, as it's called, intervenes directly in some projects at the local government and state levels. Well, this is, and they're doing it because he was asked where is that money from, and he says it's from the 1% of the federal government. This is quite unfortunate. We leave the states to spend their own share the way they want. Then the ecological project office from Abuja still uses from the federal government money to intervene. So the question then is, the one allocated to the states, how is it utilized? The ecological project office seem not to be able to reach out and find out what they're doing with that. This is where I was saying that we probably need to rejig. I mean, using Dr. Salau's excellent words there, that we need to rejig how the funds are utilized. I mean, I'm not too comfortable that we had to change the name of the office from Ecological Fund Office to Ecological Projects Office. I mean, we have a corollary. The Tertiary Education Trust Fund is a fund. That is TED Fund, is a fund and has remained a fund. The funds from that office, the law establishing that office may be different from that of the Ecological Fund Office, does not, I mean, allows that office, the TED Fund, to directly intervene in tertiary education, for all the universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education. But the Ecological Project Office funds somehow gets to the states and disappears there. So we need a way by which, even if it requires criminalizing, I mean, permit me the use of that word, of misapplication. Because the ordinary man down in the local areas and the states, they need to feel the presence of this. We are quite comfortable, and we salute the Ecological Project Office for completing almost more than 200 projects across the 6 geopolitical zones. Good. But we need more, just like Dr. Salau said. 200 projects across the 6 geopolitical zones. There are ecological problems almost on a daily basis. There are environmental problems almost on a daily basis. Climate change, we cannot do away with it. Climate change continues to inflict all kinds of different problems on our people. And these problems need to be mitigated. These problems need to be solved. We need adaptation projects. We need to get our people to be able to adapt to the unforeseen climate change. Waste management, as Dr. Salau rightly said, is one huge problem across this country. And it's an ecological problem, whether we like it or not. Poor waste management is affecting our health. We have data, we have information to show that poor waste management has a good nexus with e-health of our people. We find our people falling ill, we find our people coming down with all kinds of diseases purely because of poor waste management. So I will not shy away from repeating that we need to have a way by which we can intervene, not only intervene, monitor the interventions that are going on with the money that is coming from the ecological project, ecological fund. That's why I read in the papers a few days ago that a member of the National Assembly House of Rep, I think the name is Chief Obidebu, the Vice Chairman of the Environment Committee of the House, is suggesting that we need to have an intervention commission. He seems to not to want to agree that there is an ecological project office. He's again suggesting that we have an ecological intervention commission, meaning that he wants to be able to have a way by which we can monitor the money going down to the states so that we would then have our people feel this presence. That's why it's appearing as if the ecological project office is not doing anything, but they're actually working. But the work needs to be monitored in some way, some manner in which the people will feel the presence of the fund in changing things in their life. I mean, those who have been ravaged by the floods now, they are being assisted in some way, in some manner, but we need more impact from the money for the people to feel it a lot more.
Thank you, Professor Alo. I'll quickly go to Dr. Salau now. It is clear from comments made so far that the funds disbursed to states and local governments, something is wrong somewhere. But I also know that you mentioned earlier when you spoke that the ecological fund is not enough. Uh, if it is not enough, and we cannot even see what is happening with the little that is, in your own opinion now, that is being given to the state and local government, why do you think we should give more funds to whether the EPO or the state and local government? That's on one hand. And secondly, what about the agencies that also get a share of this fund? Do you think they're doing enough? Because, from what the permanent secretary said, the National Agency for the Great Green Wall, the Northeast Development Commission, the National Agriculture and Land Development Authority, NEMA, they all get something from this ecological fund. Do you think these agencies are living up to expectation?
Thank you. The first question is about, I'm asking for more for ecological from the ecological fund office. But before that will take place, I think we should put instrument of intervention. We should maybe amend the instrument of intervention that we monitor the disbursement and the execution of this project. Professor Alo referred to one legislator asking for commission. Yes, commission may be all right, but I still look at commission as chop for the boys. Well, fine. Maybe we have had so many commissions. NDDC is a commission. Northeast Development Commission is there. They are all doing one project or the other, but repeating projects. That's one. Who is monitoring them? That is the task that the National Assembly should focus. If they are going to be, an act, or they are going to be a law again now, to change the nomenclature in the 1% for that of the one that accrue to federal government, because the federal government, on the most serious one, let's give it to them. The one ecological fund office are doing, they monitor the execution of the project. The state-owned and the local government is what I cannot talk about. The one, because I have worked with ecological fund office at federal level, and I know that they have enough consultants to monitor. They have the modus of operandi of how they maybe call for procurement for this project is another thing entirely, because most of the ecological projects, if it's been advertised, I'm not sure of this and no more. Before they used to advertise. Now, I think selective tendering is what they are doing. That area, we need to look into that, so that more people, genuine and competent people, can come in and participate. And that's where the legislator needs to come in. Why is it that most of the project coming from office of the ecological fund office or project office is selective tendering? There's politics in that area. We need to check that before we ask for more funding. One of my major reasons why I'm asking for more funding for the office is because we are having a lot of challenges, direct, indirect. The flood that we just experienced now, secondary effect of the flooding now is what we'll be facing, and that is health, economy, and others. And these are projects that are enormous, that small money that cannot even tackle it. The money available cannot tackle it. So we need to call for more funding, but not through the commission. And that's why I said, if there is going to be a specialized bank through legislation that will be given approval by president, and that specialized bank will be used to fund most of ecological government that are privately inclined in nature, that monitoring will be easier. In that, if more funding is going to come in, how much do we need to start to establish a bank in Nigeria? If we use that 51% accrued to federal government to establish the maybe Green Bank or Ecological Bank of Nigeria, because that is how it's been done in China, in China and India and Bangladesh. They have a special bank that execute majorly ecological projects that are privately inclined. Now, ecological ecological problem now are now being given a kind of new dimension. We call city resilience project. We talk of green energy, green economy project, blue economy project. I give you example of dredging of River Niger. River Niger is about about 10,000 kilometers with its tributary. The dredging of just from Lokoja to Baro, do you know how much is been sunk in that? Through the Ecological Fund Office. When President Jonathan came in as a president, the first thing he did was to do dredging and reclamation of Otueke shoreline. Billions of naira were awarded, were given to that project. It was monitored. But when flood came now, because they didn't finish the other side, flood came in through another area. So it must be a continuous project, and it involves a lot of money. That's for that. For the agencies that are having access to ecological, like Great Green Wall, Northeast Development Commission, and the land agricultural other one that are having access to it, I think they advertise their own project. They advertise their own project. Procurement procedure is being followed. Award is being done, and I think the office, if they are monitoring it, because I know a couple of my friends who are consultants have done project for Northeast Development Commission and Great Green Wall. So we need the National Assembly not just to look at commission level. They should look at how we can transform this fund into something that will be privately oriented and publicly. Maybe we include public sector and private sector together to solve some of it that are that could be tackled through private sector. Then government owned could be done through local government, because federal government has no territory. They are just spending that money based on political requests from friends and those that are close to power. So why will federal government will come and execute projects in Apado, in Ilorin East local government, when Kwara State government is having access to ecological fund from their own allocation? So let's look at what the state government has. What are they doing with their own fund? Can't they too set aside percentage of that money in their state? Remove it from the revenue, accrued revenue allocation to the state, and they are not just using it for general execution of projects. So let us see how much you have from federal government as ecological fund revenue, fund that accrue to your state. Put it in a special account and ask local government to come up with their own ecological challenges and use it. Because I can imagine in Ilesha, a lot of problem is going on now because of the gold mine that is going on in Osun. Illegal mining sites are there. They are now happening. We are now having illegal mining sites in Zamfara, in Osun, because of the illegal miners. That become ecological problems later.
All right, Dr. Salau. I like it where you are preferring solutions to this. You know, you mentioned ecological bank, you know, which for me is also a good idea. But you know, in Nigeria, we'll deal with laws. So we have laws and regulations. And in some cases, we tend to respect the law more than the desire to have the law in the first place. Now, let's return to PAMSEC. PAMSEC, you know, Dr. Salau raised a number of pertinent issues concerning your office and your operational methodology. Now, you distribute or disburse monies to different strata of government as well as agencies. You also partake in direct intervention, by accepting to carry out projects in communities across Nigeria. And now one wonders, what is now the essence of a disbursement of ecological funds to other levels of government? What is the monitoring mechanism established, even by the law establishing your office? Is there no department that is responsible for monitoring the disbursement and the application of the monies disbursed. Because under normal circumstance, one would think that, look, if I'm disbursing a fund, I should be able to now know, track the fund and see what the fund is used for. Is it normal to just have an office that disburses funds and does not have the capacity or in fact law backing it to monitor how the money is utilized?
Well, thank you very much. Once more, let me also repeat it that we don't disburse fund as an office.
We recommend.
We don't, as I've said, the ones going to the subnationals, the states and local governments, is already by virtue of the law. It's a constitutional thing. The ones going to the agencies within the federal government is by virtue of the establishment.
What role does your office play in the disbursement of funds to agencies and other levels of government? What is the direct role that you play? You say you don't disburse,
yes,
but you are ecological project office.
Yes.
You used to be ecological fund office.
Yes. So as I've said, let me also say it again. As an office, we are only concerned with the accruals to us. That is the 55% out of the 1%. So all other agencies go to finance and directly, get their allocations. So both the states, as I've said, states and local governments, monthly, when this FAC is meeting, they get the allocation directly. And then the other agencies of federal government, by the time the 1% of federal government is also in federal government's account, they also apply directly to finance and also get their allocations. So as an office, where I will monitor, we have a robust mechanism, monitoring and evaluation of our own fund and this and that. And we have different layers. The first one is at the community level, as I've said. Projects, the committees are totally involved, from the beginning of the project to the end. They are part of the stakeholders. They are engaged at every stage. And if there are issues with the, execution of the projects, they have access directly to our office, to complain. Secondly, we are also working with the private sector through consultants. We have consultants that are also appointed to also monitor the projects. So that's another second layer, of our own monitoring. The third layer is the office itself. We have our units within the office that also go out to do direct monitoring of such projects. We also have another fourth layer. That's various auditors, from the internal auditors to the federal auditors, and different, audit outfits, from the Office of Accountant General to the Office of Attorney General, all are there. And then ultimately, the National Assembly also oversights all the projects that are executed and whatever we do as an office.
All right, thank you, Permanent Secretary. Of course, we'll continue the conversation. Let's take a break now.
They swore an oath to serve our fatherland and defend the people that traded their freedom, comfortable homes, and mortgaged their lives on the battleground for our unity and peaceful living. These are the great, fearless, loyal, and committed Nigerian armed forces who risked their lives courageously to safeguard our borders. But in the line of duty, many never returned. Nigerians, rise, let's celebrate our fallen heroes. Put on the remembrance emblem with pride to support the incapacitated and families of our fallen heroes.
The occasion gives cause for reflection and reminds us of the sacrifice made by our armed forces in preserving the unity of the country.
All ministries, parastatals, religious and corporate bodies to donate generously to the Emblem Appeal Launch. Send your donations to these accounts. Account name, Emblem Appeal Launch. Account number 393-200-7526. EcoBank Nigeria PLC.
As the 2023 elections draw near, remember, evil prospers when good men and women only wish for peace, but never take a step to make peaceful elections happen. Are you a father? Are you a mother? What are you saying to your children as elections approach? Have you warned them not to let themselves be used to cause violence? Have you explained to them what the consequences of electoral violence might be? Do your part to make peaceful elections happen. Talk to your children, protect them, from unscrupulous politicians who want to put them in harm's way, while their own children are comfortable at home, within and outside the country. Let's join hands to make 2023 elections peaceful. This message is from the National Orientation Agency, NOAA.
Every day in our country, senior citizens are discriminated against, disparaged, and treated with disdain by those who ought to respect them. We are all complicit in the way we have treated the elderly members of our society as institutions, families, or members of a shared society. Every time senior citizens get offered less than they deserve for the work they do because they are old, poor, and desperate, we are failing them. Senior citizen loses a child, and wow, they must be responsible for their death. Every time a senior citizen gets labeled a witch, is called mad, and shooed out of the way because they have no memory of where they were headed and look unkempt, we are failing them. We say, abeg, it all old, make it do die, make everybody for rest, to ailing parents, uncles, and aunts. That's discrimination. That is neglect. When you see an old woman getting beat up and being accused of witchcraft, do not turn the other way. Stop and teach people that white hairs, wrinkles, and hunchbacks are no evidence of witchcraft. Aging comes with a memory decline. Sometimes it's not out of place to have elderly people lose their way, forget details of their lives, and how to properly take care of themselves. When they get to this stage, they deserve your empathy, not scorn. Our ailing fathers, mothers, aunties, and uncles are deserving of quality healthcare and peaceful transition. Make their last moments memorable. Senior citizens have paid their dues. They deserve your care. Stop all forms of discrimination against them today.
The security situation in Nigeria has been reasonably stable in spite of activities of unpatriotic elements engaged in various criminal activities around the country. Daily situation reports coming in from states 2 months ago, it has shown relative peace on many of our highways, such as Abuja, Kaduna Birnin Gwari, Sokoto, Zamfara, Kaduna.
This message is brought to you from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, welcome back. This is Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the NTA. And the topic for discussion this morning is the management of the ecological fund. And our guests are still with us. I would quickly start with Professor Alo now. We've talked about the issues, there are actually so many issues, and from what the Permanent Secretary has said, some of these issues are beyond, his office and that of the Ecological Project Office, and some ways we can solve this problem has also been mentioned, of course, by Dr. Salau and also by you. But, my thinking is, this issue as regards the ecological fund, do you think that we could better impact on the lives of Nigerians if we think of ways to prevent ecological problems rather than focusing on how to solve them when they arise? For example, the flood issue, let's use that as an example. Right now we're in the dry season. Instead of sitting and folding our hands and saying we have ecological fund and waiting for the flood to hit us again in 2023 and then looking out of ways to come out of it, why don't we seek ways now to solve the problem? Just so that, Nigeria, because at the end of the day, Nigerians are the receiving end of all this, whether the states get to use the money rightly, whether the EPO is doing the right thing or not. I mean, the average person on the street, the average Nigerian suffers from this. So do you think that there'll be more impact of this fund if we concentrate on preventing issues than solving the problems?
Certainly, Thank you so much. I share your thoughts, and I think I agree with you that, I mean, for any issue, particularly, preventive measures are much better than curative measures at any point in life. We are beginning to see that the ecological project office, as it's called, is handicapped by law, is handicapped by structure, is handicapped. That one wants to now start thinking that we probably need to, and I mean, it's not rocket science to manage ecological funds, but the way we are structured now in the ecological project office has handicaps. That one begins to suggest that maybe we're at the point now where we need a full-fledged commission, a full-fledged agency, not sitting in the office of the Secretary to Government of the Federation, but stand alone, which would have more powers. Of course, this will return back to the National Assembly, because the National Assembly Act is what established the Ecological Fund Office as it is now. We need something more elaborate, stronger, because the ecological problems would not abate. I mean, it's natural effects that we are seeing. Therefore, and such an agency now will start tackling issues from a preventive measure rather than a curative measure, rather than the firefighting approach which we follow. As soon as the next flood happens, we start running around, putting money here, putting money there. Whereas if we have a structured approach in which we would have preventive measures set up before we even start. So I will go for the fact that maybe we need to remodel the Ecological Project Office into an agency. We have an example of an intervention agency that is working well in TETFund, intervening in tertiary institutions. Why don't we approach that line? Then there are several models across the world. I mean, we have information as to how it's managed in countries, in other African countries, in countries outside Africa. We can use those models to establish ours so that we have a proper intervention agency that will start setting up preventive measures. That will start setting up preventive measures so that our people don't get faced with these problems on an annual basis. We can, for example, think of how we can abate floods before they happen. Part of why we see these floods ravaging our people is because all the canals are blocked, all the places where water should ordinarily flow through. Maybe some of the rivers need to be dredged. These are all the preventive measures that ought to take place to prevent a reoccurrence on an annual basis as we are seeing them. We also talk about, I mean, and the Ecological Project Office has a responsibility to, even for ocean area management. Apart from desertification in the north, there is oceanification, as you said, in the south. Let's such an agency will intervene in preventive manner. It will build dikes that will prevent villages in the coastal areas from being ravaged, from being flooded. So all of these are necessary. So I agree with you that maybe we should tackle the issue from a
Professor Alo, thank you. Indeed, we indeed appreciate your contribution. My colleague asked a very pertinent question that has to do with the issue of mitigation. And annually, agencies like NIMET and the Hydrological Agency will always come up with predictions of how the rains will behave in a year and how the floods will go. They're even specific about the areas concerned. Yet, no mitigation effort is made, especially at the state level and local government level. Thank you indeed for being our guest this morning, Professor Babajide Alo, a retired distinguished professor of chemistry from the University of Lagos, Akoka. Thank you once again for being here this morning. We hope to re-invite you again when next you have this kind of a topic on Good Morning Nigeria. All right, let's return to Lagos and what will appear to be your final comment, Dr. Salau. You've preferred solutions. in some of your comments right away. What should be the proper position of things if you're asked to do a blueprint on ecological project office, what it should be all about, very briefly?
Before I go into that, I just want to support Professor Alo for his own last comment about the preventive measure that we need to take before the next year flooding will happen. That's what we call flood risk management plan. Under flood risk management plan, there are 4 phases. We have prediction, we have preparedness, we have mitigation, and we have the last phase, which is like response. Now, assessment of the flood, so that we can have data. I mean, what is the quantity of rainfall that we have? How come we cannot? Maybe manage the excess flood? Because it's been given worldwide that from research that you can use flood water to do irrigation. These are projects they can embark upon. We can take water from excess area to where there is no water. So that's one area. For my own opinion about maybe how to reshape, how to rejig the ecological fund office, I still want them to, maybe the National Assembly need to go into the table now, just to maybe go back to drawing table and try to look at ways and means that we are suggesting now in terms of private sector, public sector coming together. The TED Fund opinion, suggestion of Professor Alo, my own suggestion of private sector, where we can have a private bank from the federal government accrued revenue for the ecological because we have federal mortgage bank, we have agricultural bank, we can have ecological bank, so that one will be targeted towards private sector. Because private sector.
All right, Dr. Salau, thank you so much. Of course, you have actually mentioned some of the ways that we can solve this problem. But because of time, we cannot continue. We'll leave it at that point. Some other time, we would, of course, deal with this topic again. So quickly, just for the Permanent Secretary to round off this conversation, Shehu Ibrahim, MNI, what are your final thoughts? How do you think we can solve this problem so that Nigerians would actually feel the impact of this fund?
Okay. First of all, I want to state that the operations of ecological project is such that we collaborate with other regulatory government agencies. For example, in terms of our procurement, we work with the BPP and strictly follow the Procurement Act. In terms of other requirements like environmental impact assessment, we work with environment, NESRE and co. Secondly, recently, the federal government set up a presidential committee on flood control. That committee, we are also a member on that committee, headed by the Honorable Minister of Water Resources. That committee has been given a TOR to come out with a comprehensive master plan on how to address the issue of flooding and other, ecological problems across the country.
All right. Thank you so much, Shehu Ibrahim, MNI, Permanent Secretary, Ecological Project Office. Thank you for joining us for this conversation this morning. We're glad that you could join us. Of course, Professor Babajide Alo, thank you so much for your time. And we also want to appreciate Dr. Idowu Salau for being our guest on Good Morning Nigeria today. Now, the program is still Good Morning Nigeria, and from here we'll go over to our sports desk where Butawa Miller is on, top of issues as regards our second conversation this morning.
Brazil legend Pelé, whose real name is Edson Aran do Nascimento, passed on Thursday after a long battle with cancer at the age of 82. Pelé is widely regarded